Welcome to the Build Your First Process-Based Application training video. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll walk you through building a workflow application using AgilePoint's Community Edition. To start, I'll navigate to the Build Apps menu. From within Build Apps, I will click on Add an App, and I'm prompted to choose between a process and a form-based application. For our process-based application, I will give the name of Time Off Request Training Process and leave the default language of English. I will give my process model a name, Time Off Request Process. Our process will be triggered by eForm, so I will leave that as it is and increase the number of swim lanes to 3. I will use a blank data source. From here, I will be dropped into the application designer. I have 3 swim lanes. The first will be for our requester. The second swim lane will be for HR, and the third swim lane will be for our manager. These are used to group related activities and are not required when designing your process. To start, I'm going to drag a start task onto the requester swim lane. I will click Add New Form and give this form a name, Time Off Request Form. Then click Next. I will click on Blank Form as we have not designed any forms previously in this application and can now begin designing my user interface. First, I'll want to go to Columns and change from 3 to 2 and click OK. Next, I will begin designing my form. First, we're going to add an image. I will drag that onto my canvas, close Field Settings, and drag the image all the way across the top of my form. I can add an image here from my computer or from the internet. Once I've done so, I will click Upload and then OK. Next, I will use a text box and will use this to capture the requested by information. I will type requested by into the label and use the Process Data Explorer under System Data to capture the current logged in user. Under the Behavior tab, I will select Read Only so that this value cannot be changed. Next, I will use a date control, and this will be used to capture the date that the PTO request was submitted. I will change the label to Date Submitted, and from the default value dropdown, I will select the current date. Let's go back to the Date Submitted field and click on Behavior and unenable this field. Next, I will use another date control. This will be used to capture the start date for my PTO request. I will change the label to Start Date, click Configure and select Mandatory, and then close Field Settings. Next, I will use another date control, this time to capture the end date for my PTO request. Similarly, I will change the label, select Mandatory under the Configure tab, and then close Field Settings. Next, I will use a number box and drag that onto my canvas. This will be used to capture the hours requested for PTO. I will click Configure, mark this as a mandatory field, and close Field Settings. Next, I will use a drop-down list. This will be used to capture my manager's information. Next, I will click Configure, select this field as mandatory, and add a number of options. Feel free to use any name here under this field that's relevant to you. After I've entered in my manager details, I will close field settings. Next, I will drag a text area onto the canvas. This will be used for our requester comments to justify their PTO request. Once I've dragged this onto the canvas, I will hover my mouse over the right-hand side of the control and drag it all the way over so that it is even with the others on the page. From here, I will hover over the save icon to save my progress. Now I can begin configuring my task. I will give this task a name, Request PTO, and then click Next. By default, I have the process initiator as the participant, and will then click Finish. Next, I will grab a standard task and drop it onto the connector in the requester swim lane. Now we can begin designing our second form. First, I will click Add New Form and give it a name of Set Hours Available, and click Next. I will base this form off of an existing form and will select the Time Off Request form and click Finish. Now I can use my prior form and customize it for this task. First, I will go to Bulk Edit and unselect Mandatory from all fields. Next, I will disable the date fields as well as the drop-down fields so that those values cannot be changed. I will also mark all fields as read-only and close field settings. From here, I will add a second section to my form to make it easier to navigate. My first section will be titled Time Off Request, and my second section will be titled Processing. Click OK, which closes Form Settings. Now I can begin designing my second tab. I will add a heading. This will be titled Human Resources. I will click Configure and change the heading style from extra extra large to large, and then close field settings. Next, I will look for a number box. This will be titled Hours Available. I will click Configure, mark this as a mandatory field, and then close field settings. Let's save our progress, clear the success message, and click the application icon to return to the task configuration screen. The display name for this task will be Set Hours Available. I will then click Next to assign this task to users. From the drop-down, I will select the Roles option, and at the bottom, you will see the Users role. Once I have done so, I can click Finish and close Task Configuration window. Let's save our progress and click Save, clear the success message, and resume designing our application. Next, I will grab the Set Hours Available task and drag it into the middle of the HR swim lane. Next, I will grab the Stop icon and drag it all the way to the middle of the Manager swim lane. Save our progress and clear the success message. From here, I will want to go into the Common section and add a condition. This will be used to evaluate whether the requester has sufficient hours available for their request. The display name here will be Check Eligibility. I will choose the Else connector to show on the top and begin designing my conditions. My first condition will be the eligible condition, and the second will be not eligible. I will click the pencil icon next to eligible and begin developing my rule. From form data, I will select hours requested, and my operator will be less than or equal to. Next, I will drag hours available from form data and drag that into my condition builder. My condition is now complete, so I can click Finish and clear this section. I will drag the Else connector back to the Submit Time Off Request step so that our user can resubmit their request if they do not have sufficient hours available. Next, I will drag an email activity onto the Else connector. This will be our rejected email notification. I will click Next. We do not have a template predefined for this use case, so I'll click the plus icon and create a new template. This template will be named Not Eligible Email, and under the To field, I will use the Process Data Explorer under System Data and select the Process Initiator. This will ensure that our Process Initiator receives this email. The subject will be Not Eligible for time off. And under Form Data, I will select the Date Started option. Here I can begin designing the content for my email. I will type hours requested and drag the hours requested value under Form Data. Next, I will type hours available and similarly drag the hours available field underneath Form Data. Lastly, I will write a message to the requester encouraging them to revise their PTO request and to resubmit. Next, I will click OK. And then click Finish to close the configuration window for our email notification. Next, let's save our progress. Underneath the eForms section, I will then drag another standard task onto the connector to the right of our condition. We can now begin working on the form for our manager's approval. As in the past, I will add a new form, give it a name, Approve Time Off Request, and then click Next. I will base this form on an existing form and will select the Set Hours Available task form. I will navigate to the Processing tab and then select the Hours Available form field. Underneath Configure, I will uncheck Mandatory, and underneath the Behavior tab, I will make this a read-only field, and then close Field Settings. Next, I will use a horizontal line to create a divider between the Human Resources area and the Manager field. I will hover over the right-hand side of the control and drag it all the way across my form. Next, I will choose a heading control with the label of Manager. Underneath the Configure tab, I will change the heading style to large. Next, I will select a drop-down control and drag it onto the canvas. The label will be Manager Approval. Underneath Configure, I will add two options, one for yes and another for no. In a moment, we will bind this form control to a condition in our process to control the process flow. Next, I will use a text area control and drag it underneath the Manager Approval dropdown. The label will be Manager Comments. I will close Field Settings and drag the Manager control all the way across my form. Next, I will build a rule that when the Manager Approval is equal to no, I will set as mandatory the Manager Comments. I will select Set as Mandatory from the Actions window, and then select the Manager Comments field, and then click OK. Next, let's save our progress. I will then click the application icon in the top left-hand corner to return to the task configuration window. I will give this task a display name of Approved Time Off Request, and then click Next. On the Participants tab, I will expand the Process Data Explorer and select System Data. From underneath System Data, I will select the Process Initiator and drag that under the Participants window. Next, I will save my progress, clear the success message. From the Common Utilities section, I will again select a condition and drag it to the right of the Approved Time Off Request task. This condition will check our manager's approval. The display name will be Check Manager Approval. I will ensure that the Else connector is on the top, and I can begin building my conditions. The first will be approved, and the second will be rejected. To configure my approved condition, I will click the pencil icon to the right, expand the Process Data Explorer, and underneath Form Data, select Manager Approval. My operator will be equals underneath the string section, and then I will type yes. From here, I can click Finish and close the configuration window for my condition. I will select both the Approved Time Off Request task and the condition and drag it into the Manager swim lane, and connect the Else connector to the Request Time Off first step. From here, I will save my progress, clear the success message, next, I will drag another email onto the Else connector from our last condition. This will be our Rejected Request email notification. Again, I will want to design a new email notification template, so I'll click the plus icon and give this a name, Rejected Email, and again drag the Process Initiator underneath System Data to the To field. Next, I will click the Content tab and begin with the subject line for this email notification. Time Off Request Rejected by Manager. I will type Your Time Off Request starting, and then drag the start date from underneath the Form Data section. Has been rejected by your manager. Next, I will drag the Manager Comments field from the Form Data section, and again drag that into the body of my email notification.
Next, I will click OK to close the configuration for this email notification. I will click Finish, and again drag one more email notification to the right of my last condition. This will be the approved time off request notification email, so I will type that in the display name and click Next. Again, I will click the plus icon to add a new email notification template and give it a name. For the To field, I will expand the System Data section and again drag the Process Initiator over, and then click the Content tab. The subject will be Time Off Request Approved by Manager. And in the body of the email, I will type Your request starting on, expand the Form Data section, drag over the start date, and type Has been approved by your manager. Next, I will click OK, and then click Finish to close the configuration window. Next, I'll want to check my process for any errors. To do so, I will click Validate in the toolbar at the top. Because the process has validated successfully, I will save my progress, clear the success message, and then click the application icon in the top left. Next, I will ensure the time off request process is selected, and then check in all of the application artifacts. Once checked in, I can now publish this application for use across the organization. Next, I will go back to my Work Center to validate that this application is now available for use. Let's go back to the portal level menu and select Work Center. From the Work Center, I will select My Applications, and we'll now see the training request process in the top left. This concludes the content for this video.